yes?
Yeah.
And what's the magic word for thinking about your thinking? Marco?
Thinking is reading.
Other way around.
Reading is thinking.
Reading is thinking. Excellent. Everyone say that. Reading is
thinking.
Okay, one more time. Reading is thinking. And that magic word where you're thinking about your thinking, Brooklyn? Metacognition. We're going to talk a little bit about a kind of thinking that you can do today. So we're going to be doing some metacognition while we're learning here, and then I'm going to send you back to your spots to do some post-it note work in your own independent reading today. We're going to be talking about making connections today. And when we first started talking about metacognition, if you remember, I said there's this 3-word phrase that I just love to come across when I'm reading, where my mind all of a sudden goes, that reminds me. That reminds me of, and then I start thinking about things in my book. And I made this target here. Does everybody see how this kind of looks like a target? What is it that we're really trying to understand in the middle of that target? What is it that we really want to be able to understand, Ethan?
Working on learning targets.
Okay, we're working on learning targets, but what about reading are we really trying to understand? Are we trying to understand the big picture of the whole world in a nutshell? Or are we trying to understand what's in our hands right at that moment? What is that called? The book, right? And remember when we made our head diagram, right?
Yeah.
And we overlapped it with the book, and we had a specific word for what the words on the page were called. If you can't remember, I'm sure it's in your notebooks, and I also know it's still on the wall because we hung all of our charts on the walls. What is that word that starts with T, Henry?
Text.
Text. Text is the center of our target. It is what we most want to understand when we are reading. So I'm going to have you draw a target in your notebooks, and right in the center of your target, bam, you should write that word text. Because the text is what we're trying to understand. You should fill your whole page just like I filled my whole page. This is my notebook page. You can write that in your notebook page. So you're going to make that center of your target is the text that we are reading. So when I read Up North at the Cabin, do you remember when we were reading this book?
Yeah.
Yeah. I read Up North at the Cabin, and they went to Grandma's house, remember? Grandma's cabin was up there. And I talked about how when I was a kid, I actually saw the big walleye up in Lake Mille Lacs. And how when they were eating on the front porch at Grandma's house, it reminded me of eating at my grandma's house. And how at the very end of the book where she walks away and was trying to remember everything in her heart, that's the way I felt when I left my grandmother's house as well. All of those connections that I was making, all of those things it was reminding me of were related to my own life, right? Okay? Those are a special kind of connection, and this book is full of them for me. They're called text-to-self connections. So the first circle around the text, that's the target, is when you start making those connections that remind you of things in your own life. So we're going to write on the chart, text to self.